I'm Jerome, 28, and I've spent my entire life living in the shadow of my perfect older sister, Lisa. That family dinner for Dad's birthday should have been just another night of the usual comparisons, until Dad raised his glass and announced, "You could learn a lot from your sister. Jerome, she pays her own way." Everyone clapped while I quietly sipped my drink, something inside me finally snapping. "Then she won't miss the $3,800 transfer that hits her account each month," I said calmly. Lisa's smile vanished instantly, and the room froze. Family secrets have a way of changing everything. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button, and subscribe to hear how one moment of truth rearranged my entire family dynamic. Growing up with Lisa was like living with a constant reminder of everything I wasn't in my parents' eyes. 3 years my senior, Lisa set the bar impossibly high from the beginning. She walked earlier, talked sooner, and seemed to effortlessly hit every milestone ahead of schedule while I followed at my own pace. My parents, especially Dad, never let me forget it. Our childhood home in suburban Massachusetts became a shrine to Lisa's achievements. The living room wall displayed her certificates, awards, and trophies. My mother would point them out to visitors while my father would beam with pride. Lisa got straight, as again became a seasonal announcement in our household, like the changing of leaves in fall. My report cards, even when good, were met with distracted nods or the inevitable, "Your sister got all as at your age." Lisa was the mathematical prodigy who could calculate complex equations in her head. I was more drawn to words and images, preferring to sketch designs or write stories in my notebooks. These creative pursuits were viewed as hobbies in our household, nice distractions but not serious career paths. While Lisa was being groomed for success, I was left to figure things out largely on my own. High school only amplified the differences in how we were perceived. Lisa was class valedictorian, captain of the debate team, and president of the student government. I maintained decent grades while focusing on photography for the school newspaper and designing logos for local businesses on the side. These entrepreneurial efforts earned me some spending money, but little recognition at home. When college applications came around, my parents hired private tutors for Lisa's SAT prep and took her on tours of Ivy League campuses. They assumed I'd attend the local state university if I went to college at all. The surprise on their faces when I earned a partial scholarship to a respected art and business school in New York was almost worth the years of lowered expectations. Almost. Lisa, of course, attended Princeton on a partial academic scholarship, majoring in finance with a minor in economics. My parents covered her remaining tuition without hesitation. For my education, they provided a small starter contribution with the clear expectation that I would work part-time to cover the rest. "It builds character," my father explained, though this character-building philosophy somehow didn't apply to his golden child. After graduation, Lisa landed a prestigious position at a Manhattan investment firm, complete with a corner office by her 3rd year. I took a different path, working for a small design agency while developing business plans for my own creative studio. When I eventually took the leap to start my own business at 26, my father's response was predictable. "Couldn't you have stuck it out at a real job like your sister?" My mother, while more gentle in her approach, enabled the favoritism through her silence and her own subtle comparisons. "Lisa called today," she'd say during our weekly phone conversations. "She's being considered for another promotion. Isn't that wonderful?" The unspoken comparison hung in the air during these calls, a familiar weight I'd carried for decades. Extended family gatherings only reinforced the dynamic. Aunts, uncles, and grandparents would flock to Lisa for updates on her impressive career, while I fielded the occasional polite inquiry about my artistic hobby. My grandmother once slipped me an extra $20 at Christmas, whispering, "I know things must be tight in your line of work," despite having no actual knowledge of my financial situation. Through all of this, I struggled with my sense of self-worth. There were dark periods in my early 20s when I questioned every decision, wondering if I should abandon my creative pursuits to follow a path more like Lisa's, but something in me resisted. I believed in my vision for a business that would combine creative design with practical marketing solutions for small businesses like the ones I'd helped in high school. My studio, Clarity Creative, had been gaining traction slowly but steadily over the last 2 years. I'd secured several regular clients and was finally seeing consistent income until a major client unexpectedly went bankrupt 3 months ago, leaving me with thousands in unpaid invoices. This financial setback forced me to temporarily downsize my office space and take on freelance work to cover expenses. It was during this challenging period that Lisa called, her voice dripping with manufactured sympathy, offering to put in a good word for me at her friend's corporate marketing department. "Just until you figure things out," she said, as if my business was a phase I needed to outgrow. I thanked her politely and declined, not mentioning that I'd already lined up 2 promising new clients. What Lisa didn't know was that I had accidentally discovered her secret 6 months earlier. While helping her troubleshoot her laptop during a rare visit to her luxury apartment, notifications from her banking app kept appearing on her screen. At first, I tried to ignore them, but a recurring alert caught my eye. Transfer from parents received, $3,800. The amount and the routine nature of it suggested this wasn't a one-time gift. Later that night, after Lisa had gone to bed, curiosity led me back to her laptop, which she'd left open. A quick check of her banking app confirmed my suspicions. For at least 2 years, our parents had been transferring nearly $4,000 to Lisa monthly, while simultaneously praising her financial independence and criticizing my entrepreneurial efforts. I kept this knowledge to myself, uncertain of what to do with it. Part of me wanted to confront Lisa or my parents immediately, but another part recognized the power of information held in reserve. So I waited, building my business back up, swallowing the familiar bitter taste of injustice at family gatherings while Lisa was praised for her financial acumen and independence. That strategy of silence held until my father's 60th birthday dinner, when something finally broke inside me. The carefully maintained family narrative was about to meet its first serious challenge, and none of us would emerge from that evening the same. Dad's 60th birthday dinner was held at Romano's, his favorite Italian restaurant in our hometown. Mom had reserved the private dining room and invited the extended family, a gathering of 20 people including my parents' siblings, their spouses, and several cousins I rarely saw outside of major holidays. Crystal glasses caught the light from the overhead chandeliers, and the rich aroma of garlic and herbs filled the air as servers brought out appetizer platters. I arrived early to help Mom with the final arrangements, placing the custom birthday cake, a golf-themed creation from Dad's favorite bakery, on a side table for the big reveal later. Lisa arrived 20 minutes late, making a grand entrance in a designer dress, apologizing about an emergency client call that couldn't wait. Everyone cooed with understanding about her important job, while she accepted a glass of champagne from a circulating waiter. "Jerome! Good to see you, buddy." Uncle Frank greeted me with a hearty backslap. "Still doing that art thing?" Before I could correct him that I ran a legitimate marketing and design business, he continued. "Lisa tells me she's handling accounts for some major international clients now. Your parents must be bursting with pride." This set the tone for the evening. As guests took their seats at the long table, conversation flowed freely about Dad's golf game, Mom's volunteer work, and inevitably, Lisa's career trajectory. I sat between my cousin Sarah, who was finishing medical school, and my mother's sister, Aunt Diane. "How's business?" Aunt Diane asked, her tone suggesting she was making conversation rather than genuinely interested. "It's going well," I replied. "I just signed 2 new clients last week, both expanding businesses looking to—" "Sarah, tell everyone about your residency options," Mom interrupted from across the table. The spotlight effortlessly shifted away from my small success to my cousin's medical career. The appetizers gave way to salads, and Dad began reminiscing about his early career. Started in the mailroom and worked my way up. No handouts, no shortcuts. "That's how you build something real," he said, raising his glass. "To hard work and self-reliance." Everyone toasted enthusiastically. I caught Lisa's eye across the table and noticed a flicker of discomfort cross her face before she masked it with her practiced smile. Aunt Patricia turned the conversation toward Lisa. "Tell us about this promotion we've been hearing about, dear." Lisa straightened up, brushing her perfectly styled hair behind her ear. "Well, I wasn't going to announce it officially until next week, but since we're all family here, she paused for dramatic effect. I've been named Junior Vice President of Client Relations. It comes with a significant raise and a team of 5 reporting directly to me. Applause erupted around the table. Dad beamed, raising his glass again. That's my girl, always reaching higher. Congratulations, Lisa, I said, genuinely trying to be supportive despite the familiar sting of being the less successful sibling. As the main courses arrived, Uncle Richard inevitably turned his attention to me. And what about you, Jerome? How's that little business of yours holding up in this economy? I took a breath, determined to present my work confidently. Actually, after that setback with Meridian's bankruptcy, I've restructured my client portfolio to focus on more stable industries. The 2 new accounts I've secured are both established companies with healthy financials, and they've signed year-long contracts. Dad snorted softly. Contracts can be broken, son. Lisa's company has legal teams to protect their interests. Who protects yours when these small businesses decide not to pay? I have a lawyer who reviews all my contracts, I replied, fighting to keep my voice even. And I've implemented a phased payment structure to minimize risk. Smart thinking, my cousin Sarah commented, but her voice was lost as Dad continued. The problem with your generation is you all want to be entrepreneurs without putting in the years of groundwork first. Lisa understood that. She paid her dues at the firm, earned trust and respect before taking on bigger roles. I noticed Lisa shift in her seat again, her fingers tightening around her wine glass. Something about money discussions clearly made her nervous, which only reinforced what I knew about her secret financial arrangement. I respect Lisa's path, I said carefully, but there are different routes to success. Success, Dad repeated, emphasizing the word as if it were theoretical in my case. Well, I suppose that depends on how you define it. Some people are content with getting by. Mom attempted to change the subject. The osso buco here is exceptional. Richard, you should try it next time you visit. But Dad was on a roll now, warmed by wine and the captive audience of family members. You know what I've always admired about Lisa? Her financial independence. From the moment she graduated, she stood on her own 2 feet. Nice apartment, good car, professional wardrobe, all earned through her own efforts. Lisa took a large sip of her wine, not meeting anyone's eyes. Jerome has his own apartment too, Mom offered weakly. In that artsy neighborhood with the graffiti everywhere, Dad countered. Lisa lives in a doorman building in Manhattan. The conversation continued around me as I quietly ate my pasta. I could feel a pressure building inside my chest, years of comparisons, dismissals, and unequal treatment compressing into a dense ball of resentment. Still, I had planned to let the evening pass without incident. It was Dad's birthday, after all, and confrontations weren't my style. That resolve held until dessert was served, and Dad decided to offer his impromptu speech about life lessons at 60. He spoke about integrity, hard work, and self-sufficiency, values I actually shared with him despite his belief to the contrary. And then, glass raised toward his favorite child, came the comment that would change everything. And as I look around at my family on this milestone birthday, Dad continued, gesturing with his half-empty wine glass, I'm reminded of what really matters. Hard work, self-reliance. These aren't just words to me. They're principles I've lived by. His gaze settled on Lisa, his expression softening with pride. Some of you have really taken those lessons to heart. Dad turned toward me, his expression shifting subtly. Jerome, you could learn a lot from your sister. She pays her own way. He raised his glass higher. To Lisa, proof that the next generation can still understand the value of standing on their own 2 feet. The table erupted in applause and approving laughter. Uncle Frank called out, "Hear, hear!" Aunt Patricia nodded vigorously. My mother smiled tightly, her eyes darting nervously between Dad and me. Lisa accepted the praise with a practiced, humble smile, ducking her head slightly as if embarrassed by the attention. Dad, please, it's your birthday. We should be celebrating you, not me. Nonsense, Dad replied. What better gift than seeing my daughter succeed on her own merits? I sat perfectly still, a strange calm washing over me. The noise of the restaurant seemed to fade into the background as I considered my options. For years, I had swallowed these comparisons, these subtle and not so subtle digs at my choices and accomplishments. I had maintained the family peace at the cost of my own dignity. Something shifted inside me in that moment, a realization that by staying silent, I wasn't just protecting family harmony, I was participating in a lie that hurt not just me but potentially Lisa too, trapped as she was in this false narrative of perfect independence. I picked up my water glass, took a slow sip, and set it down deliberately. The condensation left a perfect ring on the white tablecloth. Then she won't miss the $3,800 transfer that hits her account each month, I said, my voice quiet but clear enough to carry across the table. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Lisa's smile vanished, her face draining of color so rapidly I could almost track its progression. Dad's glass stopped halfway to his lips, wine sloshing dangerously close to the rim. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. A silence fell over the table, heavy and absolute. Uncle Richard, who had been about to take a bite of tiramisu, slowly lowered his spoon. Aunt Diane's hand flew to her throat. My cousin Sarah looked between Lisa and me, her eyes wide with surprise. Lisa recovered first, her lawyer training kicking in. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, attempting a laugh that came out as more of a strangled sound. "That's ridiculous. Jerome's just upset because..." "Because what?" I asked calmly. "Because I've spent my entire life being compared to someone whose financial independence is a fiction. Because while my business struggles were treated as personal failings, your secret allowance was never mentioned?" Dad's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "What the hell are you accusing your sister of?" I met his gaze steadily. "I'm not accusing. I'm stating a fact. For at least the past 2 years, you and Mom have been transferring $3,800 to Lisa's account every month. That's $45,600 a year. Tax-free family support while she's praised for being self-made." "This is absurd," Lisa sputtered, but her eyes betrayed her. She knew I had proof. "Jerome, this is hardly the time or place," Mom interjected, her voice quavering. "When is the time, Mom? When Dad's done making me feel like a failure for taking a different path. When Lisa's done accepting compliments for an independence she doesn't actually have." Uncle Frank shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Maybe we should give you folks some privacy to discuss this." "No need," I said, still maintaining that unnatural calm. "I'm not trying to create a scene. I just thought if we're celebrating honesty and self-reliance tonight, we might want the full picture." "You've always been jealous of your sister," Dad said, his voice low with anger. "But this is a new low, even for you." That stung, but I was beyond being silenced by his disapproval. "Check your bank statements, Dad. First of each month, like clockwork. I have screenshots if you'd like to see them." Lisa's composure crumbled entirely. "You went through my private financial information?" she demanded, tears welling in her eyes. "How dare you?" After graduation, Lisa landed a prestigious position at a Manhattan investment firm, complete with a corner office by her 3rd year. I took a different path, working for a small design agency while developing business plans for my own creative studio. When I eventually took the leap to start my own business at 26, my father's response was predictable. "Couldn't you have stuck it out at a real job like your sister?" Mom placed a restraining hand on Dad's arm as he started to rise from his chair. "William, please, not here." Aunt Patricia, always one for drama, whispered loudly to Uncle Richard. "I always said they spoiled her rotten." Lisa's tears spilled over now, mascara tracking down her cheeks. "You don't understand anything about my life or my expenses. Living in Manhattan isn't like living in your bohemian neighborhood. The expectations at my level are exactly that. Expectations," I finished for her, "not requirements. You chose the luxury apartment, the designer wardrobe, the exclusive social clubs. Those weren't job requirements. They were your preferences." Dad found his voice again. "Is this true, Lisa? Have you been accepting money from us while letting me believe?" He couldn't finish the sentence, the betrayal evident in his expression. Mom's shoulders slumped. "William, I thought you knew. I never hid the transfers from our joint account. A new wave of shocked murmurs rippled through the family as this additional layer was revealed. Dad turned to Mom, disbelief written across his features. "You knew about this? Can we please not do this here?" Lisa pleaded, looking around at our extended family, all witnessing her carefully constructed image crumbling in real time. I hadn't anticipated my mother's involvement or the depth of deception. What I'd thought was a secret between my parents and Lisa now appeared to be something my father had been kept in the dark about as well. The realization made me pause, suddenly uncertain about the consequences I had set in motion. "I think," my cousin Sarah said quietly beside me, "we should probably give your immediate family some space." She stood, prompting others to follow suit with murmured excuses and averted eyes. As the extended family awkwardly gathered their belongings, the birthday celebration effectively over, I caught variations of "call us later" and "let us know if you need anything" directed at my parents. No one quite knew what to say to Lisa, or me. Dad sat stunned, looking between Mom and Lisa as the reality of the situation sank in. His 60th birthday dinner had transformed from a celebration to a revelation of family secrets that had been kept from him as well. In trying to expose one truth, I had inadvertently revealed another. My father, for all his talk of being the family patriarch, had been kept in the dark by my mother about their own finances. The private dining room that had felt intimate and festive just moments earlier now seemed claustrophobic, trapping the four of us with truths we could no longer avoid. As the last of our extended family members filed out of the private dining room, shooting curious glances over their shoulders, an oppressive silence descended upon the four of us. The half-eaten birthday cake sat forgotten on the side table, the happy 60th William, inscription now seeming almost mockingly festive. Lisa broke the silence first, her carefully crafted professional demeanor completely abandoned. It's not what it sounds like," she stammered, frantically wiping at her tear-streaked face with a linen napkin. "The money it's more like a loan, a temporary arrangement until my investments mature." Dad stared at her with an expression I'd never seen directed at my sister before, disappointment mingled with hurt. "A loan? For 2 years? Why haven't I heard anything about this arrangement?" Mom reached for his hand across the table, but he pulled away. "William, I should have discussed it with you. I just knew how proud you were of Lisa's independence, and she was struggling with the cost of living in Manhattan when she first started. So you decided to lie to me? Both of you?" Dad's voice was unnaturally quiet. I sat back, witnessing a family dynamic I'd never seen before. My father, usually so certain and commanding, looked lost. My sister, normally poised and articulate, was reduced to incoherent explanations. And my mother, the perpetual peacekeeper, was caught in her own web of deception. "How exactly did you discover this, Jerome?" Dad turned to me, his tone accusatory despite being the wronged party in this scenario. I explained in greater detail about helping Lisa with her computer issues 6 months ago. Her banking notifications kept popping up on screen while I was working. After seeing the third, transfer from parents alert, I got curious. When she went to bed, her laptop was still open to her banking app. I saw 2 years of consistent monthly transfers, all the same amount. "You snooped through my personal financial information," Lisa cried, attempting to redirect the blame. "Yes, I did," I admitted. "And that was wrong of me. But what I found was more wrong." "And you've been sitting on this information for 6 months?" Dad asked. "Why bring it up now, at my birthday dinner of all places?" The question gave me pause. Why had I chosen this moment? "I guess I reached my breaking point," I said finally. "When you made that comment about Lisa paying her own way, something in me just snapped. After years of being compared unfavorably to Lisa, hearing you praise her for something that wasn't even true, I couldn't stay silent anymore." Mom dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. "I never meant for this to become such a complicated situation. Lisa called me one night, nearly 2 years ago, upset about her rent increase and credit card debt. She was worried about maintaining appearances at work." "Appearances?" Dad repeated. Lisa swallowed hard. "My position. There are expectations. The right address. The right clothes, the right social events. It all costs money. Starting salaries, even at prestigious firms, don't cover the lifestyle that's implicitly required. So instead of living within your means or talking to me about it, you went behind my back to your mother? Dad's voice rose slightly. I didn't want to disappoint you, Lisa whispered, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. You were so proud of me, always talking about how I was making it on my own in the big city. And what about Jerome? Dad gestured toward me. While you were secretly taking family money, I've been criticizing him for his business struggles and financial choices. The irony wasn't lost on anyone at the table. Lisa stared at her plate, unable to meet my eyes. The transfers were supposed to be temporary, Mom explained, just until Lisa got her promotion. But then there was another promotion to work toward, and the expenses kept increasing. A better apartment in a better neighborhood, professional networking events, a new wardrobe. My rent is $4,000 a month, Lisa admitted quietly. My student loan payments are another $1,500. The work dinners, the client gifts, the clothes. It all adds up so fast. The money from you and Mom barely covers the basics. Dad looked genuinely shocked. $4,000 in rent? Lisa, that's more than my first mortgage payment. It's Manhattan, Dad. And I need to live in the right neighborhood to be taken seriously. So all this time, I said, while I've been counting pennies to keep my business afloat, working 16-hour days, living in my bohemian neighborhood, and being told I should follow Lisa's financially responsible example, she's been receiving what amounts to a tax-free salary supplement from our parents? Lisa turned to me, tears streaming freely now. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Everyone at the firm comes from money. They all have family connections, family support. I was trying to compete on an uneven playing field. By pretending to be something you're not, I replied, not unkindly. I understand pressure, Lisa, but I've faced mine honestly. Mom looked between us, her peacekeeper instincts kicking in despite her own role in the deception. Perhaps we should take this conversation somewhere more private. The staff will need to clean up soon. Dad shook his head, still processing. I don't understand how this happened without my knowledge. These are significant amounts of money, Margaret. How did you hide this from me? Mom's expression turned defensive. I didn't hide it, William. I used my inheritance from my father. You always said that money was mine to use as I saw fit. I chose to help our daughter. While watching me berate our son for his financial choices, Dad said quietly, That's where you crossed a line, Margaret. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table as this sank in. My mother had enabled a family dynamic that had caused real harm, not just to me but to Lisa as well. Trapped as she was in a lifestyle she couldn't actually afford. I have credit card debt too, Lisa admitted in a small voice. About $30,000. The company expenses get reimbursed, but not right away. And sometimes personal and business expenses get mixed up. Dad closed his eyes briefly, as if the revelations were physically painful. All this time, I thought at least one of my children had figured it out, had followed my example. He looked at me with new eyes. Meanwhile, you've actually been doing exactly what I claim to respect. Building something on your own, within your means, without handouts. It was the closest thing to an apology or recognition I'd ever received from my father, and it landed with surprising weight. For years, all I'd wanted was for him to see my path as valid, to acknowledge my efforts as worthwhile. I never wanted this to come out this way, I said, suddenly feeling exhausted. I just couldn't take another family dinner of being the disappointment, while Lisa was held up as the model of success. Lisa wiped her face, leaving smudges of expensive mascara on the restaurant's white napkin. I'm sorry, Jerome. I never corrected Dad when he made those comparisons. I should have. The birthday dinner was effectively over. The celebration atmosphere completely dissipated. As we gathered our coats and prepared to leave the private dining room, I realized that something fundamental had shifted in our family dynamic. Secrets had been exposed. Long-held narratives had been challenged, and none of us was quite sure what would replace them. We left Romano's in separate cars, a physical manifestation of our emotional distance. Dad had insisted on driving alone, despite Mom's protests. Lisa had called a rideshare, disappearing into the back seat without meeting anyone's eyes. Mom had offered me a ride, which I declined with a mumbled excuse about needing to walk and clear my head. The cool night air hit my face as I made my way down familiar streets, past closed storefronts and quiet houses. My phone buzzed repeatedly in my pocket. Text messages from curious relatives, no doubt, hungry for details of the family drama they had witnessed the beginning of. I ignored them all. By the time I reached my apartment, it was nearly midnight. I kicked off my shoes and collapsed onto my couch, the adrenaline of the confrontation finally wearing off, leaving me drained. I wasn't sure if I felt victorious or guilty, perhaps both. The buzzing of my phone continued. Glancing at the screen, I saw multiple missed calls from both parents and a stream of text messages from Lisa, alternating between anger and apology. How could you humiliate me like that? I'm sorry I never spoke up when Dad compared us. You had no right to expose my private finances. I never meant for things to get so complicated. I set the phone aside without responding. There was nothing I could say tonight that wouldn't make things worse. Sleep came fitfully, and I woke the next morning to the sound of insistent knocking on my apartment door. Pulling on a t-shirt, I squinted through the peephole to find my father standing in the hallway, his expression unreadable. I hesitated before opening the door. In 30 years, my father had never once visited my apartment. "Can I come in?" he asked stiffly. I stepped aside, suddenly acutely aware of my modest living space, the second-hand furniture, the wall of bookshelves made from boards and concrete blocks, the desk in the corner cluttered with design sketches and client briefs. My father surveyed it all with an expression I couldn't interpret. "Coffee?" I offered. "Black," he nodded, taking a seat at my small kitchen table. I busied myself with the coffee maker, grateful for something to do with my hands. When I finally sat across from him, mugs between us like a buffer, he spoke. "Your mother and I had a long conversation last night," he began. "About money, about parenting, about fairness." He took a sip of coffee. "About how wrong I've been about certain things." I stared at him, unsure how to respond to this unprecedented admission. "I'm not here to apologize," he continued, and I felt a familiar disappointment rise. "Not exactly. I'm here to understand." He gestured around the apartment. "To see how you actually live, not how I've imagined you live." It wasn't quite an olive branch, but it was something. "What do you want to know?" I asked. "Everything," he said simply. "About your business, your finances, your plans." For the next hour, I walked him through my business model, my client roster, my setbacks and successes. I showed him my portfolio, my booking calendar, my carefully maintained accounting spreadsheets. He asked surprisingly insightful questions about my pricing structure, my marketing strategy, my long-term vision. "You've built something real here," he said finally. "Something honest." The words hit me harder than I expected. All these years, that was all I had wanted him to see. "Lisa's a mess," he continued, abruptly changing subjects. "She stayed with your mother last night, cried for hours, said she's been living a lie for so long she doesn't know who she is anymore." "I didn't mean to destroy her," I said quietly. "You didn't. She made her choices. Your mother made hers. I made mine." He rubbed his face, suddenly looking every bit of his 60 years. "We all contributed to this situation." My phone buzzed with an incoming call from Aunt Diane, which I declined. "The extended family is having a field day with this," I commented. "Let them," Dad said dismissively. "We've got bigger issues to sort out." As he prepared to leave, he paused at the door. "Your sister wants to talk to you. Not today, but soon. She has some things to say." I nodded, not committing to anything. "I'll think about it." After he left, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, trying to process the seismic shift in my family dynamic. For the first time in my adult life, my father had looked at me, really looked at me, without comparing me to Lisa. It felt like a first step on an unfamiliar path. Over the next week, I immersed myself in work, grateful for the distraction of client deadlines and design challenges. I responded politely, but briefly, to the curious inquiries from extended family members, refusing to feed the gossip mill. Mom called daily, her messages increasingly worried as I maintained my emotional distance. 10 days after the birthday dinner revelation, Lisa texted asking to meet for coffee. Against my better judgment, I agreed. She was already seated at a corner table when I arrived at the cafe, noticeably dressed down in jeans and a simple sweater instead of her usual power suit. The designer handbag was nowhere to be seen. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down. Her voice lacked its usual confidence. "I figured we should talk eventually," I replied. Lisa wrapped her hands around her mug. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since that night." She took a deep breath. "You were right, about everything. I've been living a lie, pretending to be self-sufficient while accepting help that you were denied." "I didn't do it to hurt you, Lisa," I said. "I just couldn't take the comparisons anymore." "I know, and I'm sorry I never stopped them." She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "The truth is, I've been jealous of you for years." This caught me completely off guard. "Jealous? Of me? That's ridiculous." "Is it?" She gave a sad smile. "You built something of your own. Something real, like Dad said. Meanwhile, I've been working 80-hour weeks at a job that would replace me in a heartbeat, spending money I don't have to impress people I don't even like." I didn't know how to respond to this role reversal, where the golden child was envious of the disappointment. "I've made some changes," she continued. "I gave notice on my apartment. I'm moving to a smaller place in Brooklyn next month. I've cut up 3 of my 5 credit cards, and," she hesitated, "I told Mom and Dad I won't be accepting any more monthly transfers." "That's a big adjustment," I said, genuinely impressed. "It's terrifying," she admitted, "but also freeing. For the first time in years, I'm going to be living honestly within my means." As we continued talking, Lisa revealed more about the pressure she'd felt to maintain appearances, the competitive culture at her firm, the fears of being exposed as an imposter. Behind the perfect facade she'd presented to the family had been a person just as insecure and uncertain as I had often felt, just with different external trappings. By the time we parted ways, something had shifted between us. The pedestal she had been placed on had crumbled, allowing us to begin seeing each other as equals, as adults with different strengths and struggles, not as the golden child and the disappointment our parents had cast us as. That evening, I received a text from Mom. "Your father and I have been talking to a family therapist. She suggested a group session. Would you be willing to join us? Lisa has already agreed." I stared at the message for a long time. My first instinct was to refuse, to protect the emotional distance I'd maintained since the confrontation. But something about my conversation with Lisa had softened my resolve. Maybe there was a path forward for our family that didn't require maintaining the old roles and resentments. "When?" I texted back. Mom's response came immediately, as if she had been anxiously waiting by her phone. "Saturday, at 11. Dr. Ashley Wilson's office. Thank you, Jerome." As I set my phone down, I felt a strange mixture of apprehension and hope. The family dynamics that had defined most of my life had been irrevocably altered. What would replace them remained to be seen. The weeks following Dad's birthday dinner were a strange limbo of old patterns disrupted and new ones not yet established. The silent treatment from my parents lasted precisely 4 days before Mom broke rank with tearful voicemails. Dad's unexpected visit to my apartment had been the first crack in his facade. Lisa's texts continued to swing between defensive anger and vulnerable apology as she grappled with her own role in our family's dysfunction. Extended family members proved predictably curious about the dinner drama. Aunt Diane called 3 times in one day, thinly veiling her nosiness as concern. Uncle Frank texted asking if I wanted to grab a beer and talk, which I politely declined. Cousin Sarah, to her credit, sent a simple message: "Here if you need me, no questions asked." I threw myself into work with renewed determination. The 2 new clients I had mentioned at the dinner, a local brewery expanding distribution and a sustainable clothing brand launching their online store, provided welcome distraction from family chaos. Design meetings, marketing strategy sessions, and content creation deadlines structured my days and gave me purpose. One unexpected outcome of the confrontation was that a weight I hadn't fully acknowledged had lifted from my shoulders. The exhausting pretense that Lisa was perfect and I was somehow deficient no longer needed to be maintained. Whatever came next for our family, that particular lie had been permanently dispelled. Saturday morning arrived with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. Family therapy felt simultaneously necessary and ridiculous. Was it possible to untangle decades of comparative parenting and uneven expectations in an hour with a stranger? Dr. Wilson's office occupied a converted Victorian house near the town center, with a discreet brass plaque by the door. The waiting room was painted a calming sage green, with comfortable chairs arranged in a loose circle. Lisa was already there when I arrived, studying a magazine with intense focus. Mom and Dad entered minutes after me, the tension between them palpable. "Thank you all for coming," Dr. Wilson greeted us, a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked dark hair and perceptive eyes. "This is a brave first step." The session began awkwardly, with Dr. Wilson establishing ground rules about speaking in I statements and allowing each person to finish their thoughts without interruption. Dad sat stiffly, clearly uncomfortable with the entire concept of therapy. Mom clutched a tissue in anticipation of tears that would indeed come later. Lisa had adopted her professional meeting posture, legs crossed at the ankle, hands folded in her lap. "Let's start with what brought you here," Dr. Wilson suggested. "Jerome, would you be willing to share your perspective, since the recent dinner seems to have been a catalyst?" Put on the spot. I hesitated before finding my voice. "I've spent my whole life being compared to Lisa," I began slowly. Every achievement, every setback, every choice was measured against her path. When I discovered that the basis for a lot of those comparisons was false, that Lisa was receiving financial support while I was being criticized for not being as independent as her, something in me just broke. Dad shifted uncomfortably as I continued. "I'm not angry that Lisa received help. I'm angry about the double standard. I'm angry that I was made to feel like a failure for taking a different path. I'm angry that Lisa was praised for a self-sufficiency that wasn't real." Lisa looked at the floor as I spoke, but nodded slightly in acknowledgement. "William." Dr. Wilson turned to my father. "How do you respond to what Jerome has shared?" Dad cleared his throat. "I've always wanted the best for both my children," he began defensively. "Everything I did was to push them toward success." "And how would you define success?" Dr. Wilson asked. This simple question seemed to stump him momentarily. Financial security, professional achievement, independence. Yet you supported one child financially while criticizing the other for his financial choices, Dr. Wilson observed neutrally. "I didn't know about the money," Dad insisted, turning to Mom. "Margaret handled those transfers without my knowledge." Mom twisted her tissue. "I thought I was helping. Lisa needed support to establish herself in an expensive city. Jerome seemed to be managing." "Did you ever ask Jerome if he needed support?" Dr. Wilson inquired. The question hung in the air, highlighting years of assumptions and unasked questions. "I didn't think he would accept it," Mom said finally. "He's always been so determined to do things his own way." "Because that's what Dad taught us to value," I interjected, my composure slipping. Self-reliance was the gospel in our house, except apparently it only applied to me. Lisa spoke up, her voice uncharacteristically small. "I never meant to become part of a deception. It started as temporary help during a rough patch, but then it became normal, expected. I was trapped in an image I couldn't actually maintain." "Why did you feel you needed to maintain that image?" Dr. Wilson asked her. Lisa looked directly at Dad for the first time. "Because nothing made you prouder than when you could brag about my success, my independence, my perfect life. I couldn't bear to disappoint you." Dad's expression softened slightly. "I never meant to create that pressure." "But you did," Lisa continued, gaining momentum. "For both of us. Jerome felt he could never measure up to your expectations, and I felt I could never fall short of them." Dr. Wilson nodded. "It sounds like both of you have been carrying heavy burdens of different kinds." The conversation continued, peeling back layers of family dynamics that had calcified over decades. Mom admitted to enabling the unequal treatment out of what she called different needs, but what more honestly resembled favoritism. Dad acknowledged that he had projected his own definitions of success onto his children without considering their individual strengths and aspirations. Lisa confessed to knowing the comparisons hurt me, but allowing them to continue because they benefited her. My own revelation came toward the end of the session, when Dr. Wilson asked what I hoped would change going forward. "I don't need my parents' money, or even their approval of my career choices," I said after consideration. "But I do need respect. I need acknowledgement that my path is valid, even if it's different from what they imagined for me. I need the comparisons to stop." By the time the session ended, we had all been emotionally wrung out, but had also taken first steps toward a more honest family dynamic. We agreed to continue with both individual and group therapy, recognizing that one session couldn't undo decades of established patterns. In the parking lot afterward, Dad approached me while Mom and Lisa walked ahead to their cars. "Your business," he said abruptly. "The brewery client. Are they looking for investors?" I blinked in surprise. "They might be. Their expansion plans are ambitious." He nodded. "Send me their business plan. If it looks solid, I might be interested." It wasn't an apology, not exactly, but coming from my father, this expression of faith in my professional judgment meant more than words could have. Over the following months, small changes accumulated into significant shifts. Lisa downsized to a modest Brooklyn apartment, cutting her living expenses nearly in half. She began seeing her own therapist weekly, working through the anxiety that had driven her need for external validation. She even started dating someone outside her usual social circle, a high school history teacher who seemed refreshingly unimpressed by corporate status symbols. Dad, true to his word, reviewed the brewery's business plan and ended up making a small investment. More significantly, he began asking genuine questions about my other clients and projects, offering business advice when asked, but respecting my decisions when we disagreed. Mom struggled the most with changing established patterns. Her instinct to smooth over conflict and maintain surface harmony ran deep, but with the help of therapy, she began to recognize how her peacekeeping had sometimes enabled harmful dynamics. My own business continued to grow, ironically benefiting from the newfound confidence that came with finally standing up for myself. I expanded my client list and hired a part-time assistant to help manage the increased workload. For the first time, I found myself turning down projects that didn't align with my vision, rather than grabbing whatever came along. 6 months after the fateful birthday dinner, I received an unexpected email from a major design publication, requesting an interview about a campaign I had created for the sustainable clothing brand. The exposure led to inquiries from several larger potential clients, the kind of opportunity I had been working toward for years. When I called my parents to share the news, their congratulations came without qualifiers, without comparisons to Lisa's achievements. It was a small thing, perhaps, but it represented a significant shift in our family's communication. "We're proud of you, son," Dad said simply. "You've built something substantial through hard work and vision." The words I had waited decades to hear. 6 months turned into a year, and with time came perspective. Our family, once defined by unspoken competitions and comparisons, gradually found a new equilibrium based on something none of us had fully experienced before: honest communication. Lisa's journey to financial independence proved more challenging and more rewarding than she had anticipated. Downsizing her apartment was just the beginning. She sold her barely used luxury car, replacing it with a subway pass and occasional ride shares. She consulted with a financial advisor who created a debt repayment plan and realistic budget based on her actual salary, not the lifestyle she thought she should maintain. The strangest part, she told me over coffee one Sunday afternoon, is that nobody at work even noticed. All that pressure I felt to keep up appearances was mostly in my head. There were setbacks, of course. 3 months into her financial independence, Lisa's building needed emergency repairs, leaving her with an unexpected expense. Instead of secretly asking Mom for money, she called me. "I have 2 options," she explained. "I can dip into my emergency fund, which would leave me vulnerable if something else happens, or I can pick up some consulting work on weekends to rebuild the cushion. What would you do?" The fact that she valued my financial advice represented a seismic shift in our relationship. I helped her weigh the pros and cons, but left the decision to her. She chose the weekend consulting, discovering in the process that she enjoyed the independence of freelance work more than she had expected. Dad's evolution was perhaps the most surprising. The man who had once measured success purely in terms of corporate achievement and financial status began to appreciate the creativity and flexibility of entrepreneurship. When my brewery client used my marketing campaign to secure distribution in 3 new states, Dad took me to dinner to celebrate. Just the two of us. No comparisons, no lectures. I was wrong about a lot of things, he admitted over steaks and bourbon, including what success looks like. Your business model, your client relationships. You've created something sustainable on your own terms. That's more impressive than following someone else's established path. Coming from my father, this was the equivalent of a standing ovation. Mom struggled the most with changing established patterns. Her instinct to enable Lisa and protect her from consequences ran deep. In family therapy, we discovered this stemmed from her own childhood, where her brother had been favored while she was overlooked. She had unconsciously replicated this dynamic with her own children, but with the roles reversed. I never saw the parallels, she confessed during a particularly emotional session. I thought I was being supportive. I didn't realize I was perpetuating the same kind of favoritism I had resented in my own parents. This insight didn't change her behavior overnight, but it created awareness. When she caught herself falling into old patterns, like offering to buy Lisa new furniture for her smaller apartment while merely complimenting my latest design work, she would pause and recalibrate. My business continued to thrive, partly due to the confidence that came with finally standing up for myself. The brewery campaign led to referrals, and the design publication interview attracted attention from larger potential clients. I hired 2 full-time designers and moved into a proper office space, a far cry from the cramped corner of my apartment where Clarity Creative had begun. Exactly 1 year after the confrontation at Dad's birthday dinner, we gathered again at Romano's, same restaurant, same private dining room, but a profoundly different family dynamic. Dad's 61st birthday was a smaller affair, just the 4 of us, by mutual agreement. Lisa arrived wearing simple, elegant clothes rather than status symbols. She spoke enthusiastically about a financial literacy program she had started volunteering with on weekends. I'm teaching young professionals how to live within their means and build real financial independence, she explained, the irony not lost on any of us. Mom presented Dad with a photo album she had compiled, containing pictures of both Lisa and me from childhood through present day. I noticed with appreciation that the ratio was remarkably balanced, no longer a shrine to one child's achievements with the other as an afterthought. When the server brought Dad's birthday cake, he raised his glass for a toast. I tensed momentarily, old reflexes anticipating a comparison or subtle dig. To my family, he said simply, to truth, to growth, and to accepting each other as we are, not as we think each other should be. We clinked glasses, the sound ringing with possibilities that hadn't existed a year ago. Later that evening, as we prepared to leave, Dad pulled me aside. Your mother and I have been talking. The money we were sending to Lisa, we've set it aside. It's there if you need it for your business expansion. I considered his offer, appreciating the gesture while recognizing it for what it was, an attempt to retroactively balance the scales. Thank you, Dad, but I've secured a small business loan for the expansion. I'd rather keep growing at my own pace, on my own terms. He nodded, respect evident in his expression. I understand. The offer stands if you change your mind. As I drove home that night, I reflected on the journey our family had taken over the past year. The painful revelation at Dad's 60th birthday had been like lancing a wound, messy and painful, but necessary for genuine healing to begin. My business success felt meaningful in a way it might not have if it had come with parental financial support. There was something powerful about knowing I had built Clarity Creative entirely through my own efforts, vision, and perseverance. The path had been harder, perhaps, but the achievement was undeniably mine. Lisa had found her own kind of freedom in honesty. No longer trapped by appearances or expectations, she was discovering who she really was beyond the golden child narrative. Our relationship, once defined by competition and resentment, had evolved into something resembling friendship between equals. My parents, too, were changing in ways I wouldn't have believed possible. Dad's rigid definitions of success had softened. Mom's enabling tendencies were tempered by new awareness. They weren't perfect. None of us were. But they were trying, and that effort meant everything. The most profound lesson I had learned was that honesty, even when painful, creates the possibility for genuine connection. For years I had swallowed my resentment, maintained the family fiction, and protected others' comfort at the expense of my own dignity. That moment of truth at the dinner table, uncomfortable as it had been, had ultimately freed not just me but my entire family from a web of pretense that had constrained us all. As I unlock my apartment door, I think about how different my life looks now compared to a year ago, not just externally, the growing business, the professional recognition, but internally. The constant need to prove my worth, to measure up to an impossible standard, has faded. In its place is something quieter but more sustaining: self-validation. I wonder how many other families maintain similar fictions: golden children and scapegoats, facades of perfection that mask deeper truths. How many siblings sit across dinner tables, swallowing truths that need to be spoken? If you're watching this and recognizing your own family dynamics in my story, I hope it gives you courage. Speaking truth isn't about revenge or creating drama. It's about creating the possibility for authentic relationships. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for our families and ourselves is to break the cycles of pretense that keep us locked in harmful patterns. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to speak an uncomfortable truth to your family? How did it change your relationships? Don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with anyone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. Sometimes, it's the catalyst that allows everyone to grow. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, the families we build, whether through blood or choice, should be places where we can be authentically ourselves, imperfections and all.